Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. It is Cough Drop Wednesday here with Kari. I have quite the cold going this week, so I'm a little raspy and such. So no coffee, just doing some water and stuff today. Got my Next Life magazine up here. This is Dwight David Eisenhower when he was laying in state at the Capitol building for his funeral. So see how many more of these we can find, Life magazine covers. So if you have one, maybe let me know about it. Maybe it's not in my collection yet. Good morning, Damien, Ashley, Big Johnny, Fizz Whizzer. Some of these names, guys. I have no idea where they come from. Thank you. Hey, Frida and Brittany. So I had a question from a guy named Steve. Asked me my thoughts on putting the crosses on this side of the highway when there's like a car accident and people go out and they put all those crosses. Something I've talked about before, and I don't think my thoughts on it has really changed. I myself don't know that I'd want to go like spend time in the place that my loved one died. I'm more for remembrances in other places. I mean, for me, it would be like going back to the nursing home where my grandma died and sitting where she had died, or going back to the hospital and sitting in a hospital room. And I don't understand that concept, but I've also never had a loved one die in a car accident. So I don't know the mentality of that. So maybe there is a specific connection when something happens, in a car and in a car accident. Maybe there is something that happens that you feel more connected to that space. So, I mean, I would love to hear from somebody that has lost somebody in a car accident and that does go out and place crosses, and maybe why they're led to do that more than just visiting a grave space or more than something else that they would do for that person. I would like to understand the mentality behind it. Someone says, I think it's a driving distraction, but it's also a reminder to make somebody, drive better. Trevor's headed over to do some hair and makeup at a funeral home right now. Do you have to tell people that you can't fix their loved one? It's very, very rare that happens. It also just depends on how much work the family wants you to do. If they want you to go to extreme measures. Jeremy, how long does it take to get autopsy report back? So the toxicology is what takes a long time because they're sent out to a separate lab. So typically, if it's not something that they can see in the tissue themselves, like the medical examiner, then they are going to send out the toxicology and wait for that to come back. That could take 3+ months. I mean, I've seen it take 6 to 8 months. And I also know of death certificates that have no cause of death because there is no cause that they could find from anything that they did. But I would say 3 months is a pretty good ballpark. Kind of a little bit longer case, but yeah, it's a good ballpark. Kari, do funeral homes use weaker formaldehyde to embalm people than what is used in the bodies at the mortuary school? No. So, I mean, each funeral director chooses to use a solution of their choice. There are some funeral homes that no matter what the case, like you use these 2 bottles of fluid, and that's what you get for every single body that you work on. It's not rational. It's not a good way to do business because everybody is not going to be that way. Everybody's not the same size. Everybody doesn't have the same conditions. So the same 2 bottles of fluid on every body are not going to really work. But I do know funeral homes that's kind of their methodology. Thank you, JW. Joe Twilly, what's one of the oddest requests you've gotten from a family member? These are hard questions when you guys ask me oddest or weirdest, because to me, my version of odd and weird is far, far different than yours because of what I see and do. Let me think on that. I don't know if I'll circle back to it. It depends on if something pops in my head. I can't even think of anything that's odd. I did bury someone's cat with them that had been in a 5-gallon bucket out in the garage since the cat had died a couple years before, and they placed that in with the person. Talk about smell. They just placed the whole bucket in with them. Hey, Shauna. All right. So Beth has asked me some more questions. She was asking about, we had talked about Kobe Bryant. The person meant, how do you handle badly burned bodies? Do they need to be embalmed? So it really just depends on what the person's condition. If there is tissue that we can get fluid into to preserve, then of course we're going to try. But burned tissue doesn't really absorb when it's to a certain point. It's not going to absorb anything because there's nothing there to absorb into. It all just depends. I would assume, personally, if I had to guess for Kobe Bryant, there would be maybe more trauma to his body than burned from the situation, but I don't really know for sure. If I had a very tall person or a very heavy person, like 7 foot 6 inches or 600 pounds, there are special order caskets. Yes, they're called oversized caskets. I've never loved the term. Batesville Casket Company came out with the name Dimensions caskets, which were a standard outside, but a little bit larger inside. And then the oversized came in this Dimensions line. But yes, you can get them in all different varying shapes, sizes. You can get specially made certain sizes, because that's typically, if you get longer, it's going to be wider proportionately. So let's say you have somebody who is 7 foot 6 inches tall, but they're, string bean tall. If you get a casket that's as wide to balance how tall it is, it's going to be oddly proportioned for the person. So we might have to special order something. The coronavirus, Vicky's asking about. I'm going to do a quick 2-minute, I think, on the coronavirus just itself and what the CDC is telling us as embalmers to protect ourselves. How do you get a death certificate if you're waiting on autopsy report? So you'll get a death certificate right away. It's going to say pending. So it'll be pending until the cause comes back from the medical examiner, which could take 6 to 12 weeks. They're talking that they went to India. A friend just went to India, witnessed the burning of the bodies by the river. So polluting, apparently bad for the river and air. It's religious. How could it be done differently to reduce pollution? Maybe you would have to, get containment like we do with cremation. That's basically our version of it here. There's only one outdoor burning, pyre. It's called a funeral pyre, where you place the body up on a platform with branches and wood all around, and you burn the body out in the open air. There's only one of those in the country, and it's only for the members of that community that it was legalized for. The river there is so polluted anyway, and it would be like taking ash from burning anything and just putting it in water. It's really actually naturally, what is left over is very natural that you're putting in there. So the water, I'm not too concerned about. You are definitely putting pollutants up in the air by burning, just like you would grilling or just like you would anything else. So it's not more contamination than anything else that you would burn. 2 of my grandparents died 3 years ago when we were told they are in a sealed casket and vault. I'm wondering if water and other things are still getting in them. We're in Alabama with lots of rain. Molly, it's a great question, and it'd be great if there was a set answer, but there's not. Unfortunately, I can't tell you what's going on underground. Things breach. seals breach, it could have breached. You know, they're created so that they don't, that they can keep out the moisture in the water. There's still moisture inside because your body has moisture in it. So it's not, there's still moisture locked in there with your grandparents. But I can't say whether or not any groundwater has gotten in because I'm not in the ground. I know that sounds like a snooty answer. I don't mean it to be snooty. It's just, there's no way for me to know. What made you go into mortuary science? I started the job when I was 16 and here I am. Have you ever let mortuary students shadow you? I've had several apprentices over the years. So in Michigan, you have to be licensed 5 years before you can then take on an apprentice. And I've had several over the years that have apprenticed under me, and I've had a few that have come shadow with me for a day. Pending cause of death means that they don't know. It's pending, it's on hold. It means they're waiting until they have all the answers so that they can determine a cause of death. Yeah, so when the cause of death comes through, they amend the death certificate so that it has a cause on it and it's filed with the state with the amendment on it. When my mom was cremated in 18, we placed a tiny plastic elephant in her hands. They gave it back to me when I picked up her cremains. Is this normal that you cannot cremate something like that? Typically plastic, yes, because plastic does not cremate. It's going to melt and it's going to get into the machine, into the retort, into the surface area of it because it's going to melt down in it. So we definitely, especially for plastic, don't let that into the machine. And, you know, enclosed bottles, so like glass bottles, because those are going to kind of explode in there. So things like that, we try and keep out. Lolly's World, there's no answer to that. There's no way to know how long you to rot because every person decomposes differently. Sheila, thanks so much. Does the price of everything go up when you're heavy set? So the price of everything does not go up when you're larger. If the casket needs to be larger, then the price is going to reflect that. However, there's varying prices of caskets, just like there are for standard sizes. Vaults, you know, if you have to get a larger vault, then it's more material put into that vault, so it's going to cost more. Where you're going to see more cost is if you have to have 2 grave spaces. If they can't fit the vault in 1 grave space, and there's very small margin of error in cemeteries. I mean, between vaults may only be this much on either side. So to place a larger vault in is not always going to work. So you may have to choose a grave space that's on an end so that they can, you know, have excess space out into a roadway, or purchase 2 grave spaces. So you're definitely going to have more cost there. The funeral home is not going to just charge more because someone is heavier. It's not how it works. However, if let's say on the removal, when they came to bring the person in their care, they had to call in 4, 5, 6 extra individuals to assist, then they may charge the family that more because they're having to pay out more to staffing. So some of that may be reflected over to the family because it should be. Honestly, if we have to bring in that much more staff to adjust to the situation, we then are going to roll that over to a family. Just like if we had to drive an extra 200 miles to go get somebody, we would charge that also more to the family in any case. So there's not just a heavy charge, but it's, you know, per situation. If there's things that cost more, then that's going to definitely be reflected over to the family. You're so welcome, Vicki. Jeremy, not necessarily. The funeral home may have to acquire you new copies. It depends on the state. Some of them will send the new copies to the informant. So it depends on the state or even the county and how they function. Yes, the deceased wears clothing when they're cremated. Yes, I was 16 when I started working at the funeral home. I don't have my certificate for being a crematory operator. I have run a crematory when I was at a funeral home that had a crematory back in the day. I did help run the retort once in a while, but I didn't have a certificate. It wasn't as, I don't know, it wasn't as regulated maybe, or maybe just didn't know better, or maybe, I don't know. Couldn't tell you what the process was in place then. I mean, that was 20 years ago almost. You can, though, at mortuary school, a lot of them will have Cana come in or a program come in and do certification so that when you leave mortuary school, you are certified as a cremation operator. Thank you, Chris Miller. I appreciate it. I can't wait to go back there. I had so much fun going to England. I can't even tell you. How does a mausoleum work? What do you mean? How does it work? Jeremy, you need to find out from the funeral home or from the county how it works for you there. Everywhere is different. So who pays for funeral services on homeless people? It's a great question. It depends on if they're indigent, if they have a social worker, if they're unclaimed, if they have no family. So just because someone's homeless doesn't necessarily mean they don't have family that would take care of their funeral expenses. It doesn't mean that they don't have money. They just may not be using it for housing. So there's different situations there, and it depends how it plays out. Typically, the medical examiner, the county all get involved to decide if the person has family, and they investigate into it, and they try to figure out, what is the best course of taking care of someone. They also might have to identify the person. If someone is homeless and they have no identification on them, then you have to figure out who they are. I think was it Cook County? I don't know. There is a video on YouTube that I had watched a while ago, and it was about unclaimed individuals and kind of the process that you go through, that the investigator has to go through and figure out who this person is and who they can contact, and then go down the road of storing the individual, or do we cremate them and then hold on to the cremated remains until family comes forward. So there's a lot of process there, and it depends on the county and the state and how they want to handle it. But cost-wise, funeral homes donate a lot of their time and efforts, and then the medical examiner donates a lot of time and efforts because there's not a lot of money there for those type of things. Can you be cremated without embalming? Well, yes, you don't have to be ever embalmed. There's no law that you have to be embalmed. My daughter-in-law wants to donate her body to science. Will she need to be embalmed beforehand? Are they kept in a cooler? So donating to science, you cannot do a standard embalming because your body has to be fully intact. So they will do initial injection of fluid to preserve the individual until their body is used for science, for the medical school or for the cadaver lab, wherever they're going to be sending their body or their parts of their body to for usage. They're going to preserve them so that they are ready when the time comes. So then after they are cremated, and the family can choose to have the cremated remains returned to them, or they can choose to do a mass kind of a burial of cremated remains with a ceremony once a year at medical schools. And they would be, sometimes they're on campus and sometimes they're at a cemetery in the local area. Like when I went to Spring Grove in Cincinnati, they have an area for all anatomical donations that are buried up there with a headstone. How does a mausoleum work? Is it a building for graves? Who goes in it? So there's different types of mausoleums, kind of. You have your outdoor, your indoor ones. A mausoleum is basically a wall of crypts. So they're holes in a wall that are meant for a casket to go inside of. There's no vault used because a crypt is a grave that's already in place, essentially. And so the end will open and the casket is slid in. And then you can do kind of a double one where you push one all the way in and then the next one goes in secondary lengthwise, or you can do them side by side. So it just depends on the configuration of the mausoleum that you're in. Anybody can go in one. You just purchase it just like you would a grave space out in the cemetery. So when I worked at the funeral home when I was 16, I worked in the evenings. I worked like a 5 to 9 or 4 to 9 back in the day, answering phones and greeting folks. And then I worked on the weekends. What does a decomposing body smell like? Honestly, no way for me to explain it. It is a sweet, pungent odor, very distinctive. Once you smell it once, you will always notice it. Even if you go out and like walk through the woods, you'll be able to tell if something is dead and rotting around you because you pick up on that scent so strongly. Viper Boy, I don't know what you're asking there. Who is long-legged? Oh, a certain length. Hope this makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. Oh, how hard was the licensing exam for me to pass? So I passed it the first time. We did it back in the day. We went and we sat in class. There was no computer or anything back in the day. And we took both at one time. So we took one in the morning, ate lunch, took one in the afternoon. Now you guys take one and then a few weeks later or whatever, you take the second. But we took it all in one day. Have a good day, JW. Plumber guy, I'm so sorry. When I was talking to my mom a few days before she passed, she said, tell Kari thanks. Oh, this is like, when you guys share stuff like that, like, just blows my mind, truly. Are her services this week for her? And what part of the country are you guys in? When a business closes, is there a law where the paperwork records go, like a doctor's office? No, HIPAA doesn't cover us. So our records are more just for confidentiality. I mean, we definitely, for OSHA and federal laws, we have to keep tax records and employee records for so long. But pre-arrangement records and things like that, a funeral home can literally just shut its doors and walk away and leave all of that paperwork there, which has happened and which has been found happening that way. So it's not cool. It's not at all, but that does happen. Have you ever seen a sheriff get arrested by the medical examiner? I have here in Indianapolis. Well, the medical examiner can't arrest somebody. They don't have authority to arrest, but they can definitely, tell the officials that they've done something wrong. So that's interesting that you have something going on in Indianapolis, some scandal. That is interesting. Hey, over in Phoenix, hoping to get to Phoenix this year. How long can a body stay out without being embalmed? You know what? After 2 hours, the person may be smelly and purging, or they may lay there for 3 days and not be that way. There's just no way to really for sure know. Pre-planning a funeral is literally the best gift you can give your family. Getting all your information in place, putting documents on file like your discharge or life insurance information, things that your family are going to need, helping to pick out your own things. So there's not a lot of question like, oh, what would mom have wanted? Would she wanted this? She wanted that? Just allowing them to know your wishes and having it all in one place. Best gift ever. How would you place a person who is big and tall in a casket for viewing? Because Miss Joelle from the funeral home and scandal video had a person that long. I hope this makes more sense. So if you have a large person that's, there's claim, oh, you'll cut off their legs, you'll do this. So up to a certain length, we can fit in a standard casket. And we have tricks where we can bend the knees. You know, when we're embalming, we place something under the knees so their knees are bent, or you do kind of like you cross their, almost like a soft crossing of the legs where the knees kind of touch the outside edge and your feet cross down together. So you can get an extra few inches for the deceased by kind of bending their legs nicely up into almost a crisscross applesauce sort of position. But cutting them off, not ever an option. Oh, you're so welcome, Walter. Can a child of the deceased request information on a person from a funeral home? Certain information that we have is private. We only will give out to the person who was the signing next of kin at the time of the death. But a death certificate in many states, not all states, is public information. So anything on the death certificate we can always pass out, or we can give out, or we may send people to the county clerk to get their own copies. Okay, plumber guy, yeah, send me over an email. Oh, what is your favorite death custom if you could choose anything? Erica, whoa, that's a great question. Let me think a second. Randall's asking, how cold does the deceased feel when touched? The deceased is room temperature. So if your room's 70 degrees, the body's going to be 70 degrees. Just like anything else sitting out in the room, it assimilates to room temperature. My favorite death custom, I would say, well, I have several. I would say one of my favorite things is bathing and shrouding of bodies when people do that for their loved ones. So like when the Muslim community comes in and they bathe and shroud their members of their community, or when certain cultures come and they dress their own people, or I just, there's something beautiful about that people, hey, Ricky, good morning. Thank you so much. There's something so beautiful about caring for your own people. I think that's probably one of my favorite customs, is just that hands-on, because so much of our society has become hands-off. So for families to do that hands-on in communities, not just families, like you go care for somebody because they were part of your religious community, part of your, your neighborhood, part of who you spent time with, and you go care for them because their life mattered. It's beautiful. And that is just something I fully respect and appreciate, and wish that it was a bigger part of what we do as a society as a whole. No, everybody doesn't get an autopsy. It's only if the death is questionable. Yes, I've embalmed some people that were burnt, partially burned. If they're to a certain point, then there's not much to embalm, and there's not going to typically be a viewing. So what height is the limit for putting someone in a casket? There's not really a limit. It's kind of depending on the person and the funeral director, kind of how they maneuver. I've had somebody who was 6'7" in a casket. They're cozy, but they were in the casket. So 6'4" is not absurd. I want to make sure I get this one email done. Do you remember Scott Peterson, who killed his pregnant wife, Lacey? When they found Lacey, there was only a torso, no head, no lower legs or hands. How do you think they prepared her torso? Would they even try to embalm her? Doesn't seem to be a reason. So it depends. I don't know if she was buried or if she was cremated. Sometimes what will happen is they'll cremate the parts that they have, and then as parts are found, if they find more parts later, then they can cremate the other parts and add them to what they have already. If that's all they have and that's what they're going to be burying, you can treat the tissue and you can embalm the tissue. if the family would like, or you may, like you said in the email, kind of double bag or bag up the deceased portion that you have and just bury that. So it just depends. It depends on what they have in front of them. I have no idea what they had. She would have had an autopsy, so she would have been, autopsied and tissue samples taken and all of that. So, you kind of work with what's in front of you. There's no like book that we go to that, okay, if we find a torso in the river, we're going to do this. We go with every situation with what is our best version of what we can do. And we try our best and we do our best. And that's all we can do at the end of the day, any of us. Did you see the video I linked on Facebook? The dodgy Indian embalming? No, I did not. No, a body does not explode from being embalmed at all. I wonder, and I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but I wonder where some of these thoughts or ideas come from, and if these are things that people have told you. So that, that's the huge part of why I want good information out there, is because thinking that people explode just because they're embalmed. And Cynthia, I'm not making fun of you, I promise this, but I'm just where that came from, that you thought that. And I don't want you to believe that that happens. Hey, Carl, have a good day. Have I ever embalmed a person that kind of spooked you? So I'll tell you my one story, and I can't even tell you why. I don't know if I was just letting something get the best of me this day, but I just kept imagining the lady's ears were getting pointier because they kind of pointed right at the top. And I kept imagining that they were getting pointier as I was embalming. And I was like, all right, were they that pointy before? Were they not that pointy? Are they getting pointier? Thinking that she was changing. I don't even know. This was so long ago when I was new and I was late at night and I'm embalming and I'm like, what if she's turning into, I don't even know what, but once your mind starts going to other thoughts and stuff, it just kept going. So thank you, Dan. Yeah, it's just a cruddy crud. Makes me want to just lay down and sleep, but I have so much work to do. Make sure you guys head over. I want to make sure that it posted today, the Grave Woman. So the Grave Woman and Little Miss Funeral are doing their their week of birthday giveaways. So they do 13 days between the Grave Woman's birthday and Little Miss Funeral's birthday. And they do a video with somebody else in the industry, in the business. And today is my day. So my video posted today. So you have to follow the rules in their giveaway, and then you can win a prize from that day. So if you want to go back and enter every day for this week so far, go enter for all 13 days. So you have to, let me read you the rules. You have to subscribe to Lauren's channel and then like the video, subscribe to Joelle's channel, like the video, subscribe to Kari's channel, and then comment on my video with an answer to my question. So go watch the video on the Grave Woman's YouTube page and answer my question that I asked. I can't wait to see what some of your answers would be to this, because it was kind of a fun question. But head on over and make sure you enter that, and you could win a fun little prize from yours truly. So make sure to go and do that. One more question. In the Watts case, where they found the little girls in oil, is there any way to make them viewable? Unless I had the little girls in front of me, I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure. I know they had skin slip and such, but I don't know how bad it was. I don't know what their condition was. Whoever cared for them was definitely up against some serious problems from being in oil and from it being, warm outside and such, and it being an extended period of time. So all three of the individuals, well, four, because of the baby, they were all in rough shape because of the situation. So I know that a lot of people, you know, they hear that story and they hear skin slip. So then they head over to my skin slip video. And I can always tell when a new thing happens within that case, because I all of a sudden will get a little spike in activity on certain videos because of that story and that case, which is horrible. Just horribly sad things that you hear and see in the news. You guys are asking really good questions this week. How would you feel about taking care of an evil person, murderer, abuser? So Katie, I go back to this, and I've said this before. I heard this by an embalmer once, and I think it's perfect, that you have to go by the gleam in the eye theory. Everybody was once a gleam in someone's eye. Everybody was a child. Everybody was loved by a mother or a father or a grandma or someone. Just because someone is evil and does bad things down the road doesn't mean there's not somebody that loved and cared for them. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald had his wife. There's, you know, these kids that, like in Sandy Hook, you know, the boy that committed all those murders, he had a mother who loved him. You know, there's people who care about these people because they're not just 24/7 horrible, evil people. They do evil acts, yes, but they still have people that love them, and they were a gleam in someone's eye once. They were a wanted child usually, and they were raised, and they had Christmases and everything. So their family deserves to get to say goodbye to them as well, even though maybe the deceased shouldn't deserve to get to have much, but their family didn't choose that position and didn't choose that evil. So they should get to have their moment to do what they need to do to move forward. They're already in a, excuse my language, guys, but shitty situation that their loved one is in the news or their loved one has gone through all these things, and that family shouldn't be punished for what their loved one did. And so I firmly believe I'm not there taking care of the deceased fully. I'm there taking care of the family and helping them through a situation, especially in those cases. They don't get to have the funeral they usually would. They don't get to have the support from their friends and family because they're in hiding and they're being condemned and they're being shamed. And so, you know, it's important to remember as funeral directors that our role is to care for the deceased without judgment, and to make sure the family is getting what they need in the end. And that to me is what I fully and wholeheartedly believe. Have you seen CTN and brain in your field of work? No, because we don't like look at the brain. Really, it's there, but some of the times, but we don't really look into it. So, all right, guys, I have to close off. This one's getting long. You guys have been really great today. Bring the questions next week for sure. So next Wednesday, I think will be same time, same place. So I'll see you next Wednesday, guys. And if you have immediate answers or questions, make sure to email them over to me, Kari@KariNorthey.com. Head over to the Grave Woman's channel and make sure you enter at least today's winning giveaway thing so you can win something from me. So talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of the week. Bye.